Welcome, everyone. You're tuning into Engaging Walk. My name is Drake.
And my name is Rubie.
We believe in the power of walking together and talking together.
It's a simple act to stay connected, and movement is key.
All right, so this week we did some more engaging walks, and we are still, like I said, we're exploring El Cajon area. It's our new home. It's east of San Diego, and wanted to thank you guys for tuning in. This is episode 26, so we are halfway through our yearly, but it'll take probably two, like if we did one episode a week, it'd be 52 weeks. So yeah, so that's a really big accomplishment for us to be like our 6-month mark of making podcasts. So we thank you guys so much for tuning in. So this week we're going to continue on with our topic, which is navigating the one.
Yes.
So we want to clear up exactly what we're talking about when we say navigating the one. We're talking about finding your way to search and to properly assess who the one is for you. Mm-hmm. Now, there might be multiple people out there. It's not just like a soulmate. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the one for you, a person that you can reasonably and happily live your life together and coexist, harmoniously. Well, yeah. We can give yourself the best chance for success in marriage. Mm-hmm. So we're going to divide this up into 2 parts. One is, in this section, we're going to be talking about asking the big questions in that getting to know each other phase. And as you progress in knowing each other more and more, there's more and more deep questions, asking those big, deep questions that you're going to need to know in order to really understand who this person is, one. And then second, how are you going to coexist as a family unit? Mm-hmm. So that's going to take getting into some really deep conversations and some really big topics. So I'm going to let Rubie take it from here.
And before we start, I encourage you, if you have a note, you can write down questions that, speak to your heart. And that way, you know what to ask the person that if you already have one. So the first one will be for yourself to ask the person, the personal level. This is,
like I said, we're going to break this up into 2 parts. One, this part is where you're really driving at who this person is, because like Rubie and I were discussing this beforehand, and she brought up an excellent point. The person can tell you like what they think you want to hear. And the more questions that you ask, the more you can actually really drive at who the person is fundamentally. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're talking about in this section of the first section of this. And the second one, we're going to get into how can you ask questions to really drive at how you're going to work together as a family unit.
Okay, so for the personal questions, I think it's the most inspiring questions I receive or I love to ask people is that what is the meaning? What are they doing to bring meaningful to their life? What is it that they make them come alive? Mm-hmm. So you can ask that questions. So from that, instead of asking like very cookie cutter question like, what do you like to do in life? Or
like what are your interests, or like what's your hobbies?
So asking a little bit different approach or a different angle of approach to the question to the person's life, you will get to hear them a different way. So I would say, what drive you? What make you come alive?
Yeah, what are your passions? What are you passionate about
in life? And what was the last time that you are the most happiest in life? And then write it down or, memorize, because it's kind of weird if you write things down in front of the person, like an interview. And you can start hearing the person, sharing. And also, like, let's say, what is your goal in life? Talk about goals beside passionate things. So if the person already mentioned like, oh yeah, for example, I love to be a good swimmer, that I feel like I become myself when I in the water swimming, for example. And you can ask, okay, so are you a swimmer, a professional swimmer right now, or you're still working on that? So if the person answer like, oh, I'm already in that and I'm trying to work harder, this person intentional with their life. Or the person said, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it in the future. And you can ask like, so are you plan? How is it for you to move forward from here? You know, what is your practical steps? And so based on the answer, you also know like, are they intentional with their life or not? If they said, oh yeah, so this maybe next week or next month, I'm planning to take this class, or like training this, and or the answer could be like, oh, I don't know, I will see because I'm still busy right now. So you can see how intentional they are toward their life.
Yeah, not just intention, but you also see how much drive they have, how much will they have to succeed, and how much determination and vision they have. So, a person that kind of like just sits on their dreams and like puts them aside, and you're like, okay, well, maybe this person's not the right person for me. If you start seeing these things, or a person that doesn't really have their life together, they're like, okay, you can start to like, that's what I feel like I hear Rubie saying is like, you can start putting these pieces together once you start understanding what this person's passionate about, what they like to do with their time, and are they actually doing the things that they want to do in life? And if they're not, why not? Some people might have a good reason. Some people might not. And you asking those deep questions are really important, especially in that phase, so you can get a sense of who this person is, what do they want out of their life, and because this goes back to the first episode that we've done in this series, which is you need to bring something to the table.
Yeah.
You need to be settled, or not settled, but completely, but at least on a good track in your own life. That way you have some sense of stability and self-worth going into the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's a foundation that you're going to need to have. So, this might not be like as simple as having hobbies. It could be like this person has a career that they're really invested in and they love, or a business that they've set up, or like in Rubie's case, like she's very, very passionate about working with children, serving children, and I saw very early on that she was doing that in all facets of her life, that she was doing that in her church, and she was doing that in her career, and she made a career change that that really spoke to her, and not only that, but she was very rooted and grounded in her faith. And that was something that she was very passionate about, and is something that she's very passionate about. And that passion and that source of strength for her, and it really speaks to who she is as a person. And I think that is ultimately what we're looking for, because in a person that is our soon-to-be like life partner, you want to get a sense that this person has not just a moral compass, but they have sets of principles and values that you can respect. And if you can respect that person for who they are, then that goes a long way, because you can't be in a relationship with somebody that you don't respect.
It's very true. That's so true. I totally agree. And just also, like whatever that Drake mentioned, that back in the first episode in the series, that investing yourself, like for me is very big key for me when a person is a learner, because you can see that the person is has a teachable heart, which is very key. Because in life, when you go through journey of changing and growing, we know that I know this person is going to continue to grow in new things, instead of like, oh, I know it all, I don't want to know more, so as a characters as a learner, have a teachable heart and love to learn new things. This is a very key things to my heart, that this is what I'm looking for the one.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that drives again at values, the inner character of the person. And, like we were talking about, a lot of these things aren't going to be truly revealed until you start to get to know each other, because, a person's resume might be one thing, and then how they are at work is another thing.
That is true.
But at least you can sort of like put your detective hat on, not interrogate the person like, CIA style, but at least like put yourself out there and save some time and really ask these deep questions. That was something that really happened in our relationship early on, and I was thankful for, because we got to know each other on a deep level very quickly through asking these questions and through understanding each other. So I think, and particularly in myself and Rubie's case, was we asked a lot of questions about. We're going to get into some of the questions that we asked each other, so that you guys can use that as a rubric, or a sort of a guide, if you will. But I remember at that stage there being some questions that we asked each other, and that would take, I know, a day or two to really fully flesh out an answer, because they weren't just like, hey, what's your favorite movie? There were more questions like, how do you feel about children, and like, do you want to have children? And well, we'll get into some of those questions. Actually, let's dive into it. That's a good time to get into it. But yeah, these questions that we would ask each other, they wouldn't take it's not like these types of questions that you can just answer in a minute.
Yeah.
They're questions that you're going to have to keep coming back to, and really truly understanding each other's position and seeing if you are compatible.
I wanted to add something on toward that. Like before we go into like deep questions, I know I'm kind of nerdy, so it's kind of scary because I will ask. I love asking questions, so it's kind of intimidating for a guy to use so many big questions. But I'm glad that Drake able to take it on, and so give the person heads up, like, hey, I know I'm asking some big questions, but you don't have to answer me right now. Feel free to come back to me, or if you or add more to it when you feel to, so that way the conversation flow naturally. And one of another thing that I ask for about another person to know the person, I will ask about faith. For me, faith is a big thing, and one of the very big reason that relationship won't last or marriage won't last because of the faith. So let's dive into that. So right on, I think the second or the first date, or even we texting stage before we even meet, we're talking about faith. So asking like, do you have a relationship with God? Not like, are you a Christian? Because people can be a Christian, but they don't have relationship with God. So asking him, do you have a relationship with God? What does it look like for you? How do you maintain the relationship with God? By asking those questions, you can tell, like, does this person really spend time with God? Does this person really know God or not? Because people can go to church and have nothing to do with God, or no interest at all in the Bible, no interest at all in growing the relationship with God. And maybe you can ask, like, do you have any mentors in the church or in faith? How do you grow? How did you grow in faith? Or, things like that. You can check, like, is this person intentional to grow with God?
Yeah, the God question is a really big one, because not only are you driving at faith, but you're driving at values when you are asking about your potential partner's faith, because faith is not just the religious aspect of, like, do you believe in God, how much, how big of a part of it is in your life, but it also drives at once a person is, okay, yes, I believe in God, or I don't, or however they stand, a whole system of values falls from that position. So right from there, you can get a very good idea of, like, who this person is, how much you can relate to them in terms of like sharing that spiritual and faith connection, and what you can expect from them. So it is a very big and important question, because in Christianity we have like a whole system of values that, because the Bible isn't just like, hey, show up to church and we'll see what happens there. It's like, no, we show up and then we go over what God expects from us, and how we're supposed to maintain that relationship, not just with him, but with each other. There's a whole system of values that falls from that. So that is a big question that you want to get into. And like Rubie was saying, it's one of the major markers of compatibility in a relationship.
And then it's one of the things that I think Christians, girls or guys, usually face with is that the moment we ask, okay, Christian, yay, good. What denominations are you? You know, the moment that we have different answer for the denominations, we will stop and pause. Oh, okay, bye, move on. Because that's what I face with when I get to know Drake. So we are a totally different denomination. And that's just the questions I face. And that's also the questions or the fact that I need to look into that and ask myself very clear, like, where am I stand? Where is God's word speak about it? So I'm more like charismatic.
Yeah.
And Drake is Greek Orthodox.
Yeah, we went over this quite a bit in our Growing in Faith episode. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it was like episode 16, somewhere around there. But yeah, we come from totally different backgrounds. But Greek Orthodox Church has a lot of traditions and a lot of, how do I put it? It's a very rooted system of beliefs that comes from the earliest times in the Christian faith. Mm-hmm. And they take a lot of pride in that. And that pride, you know, in some cases helps establish the church. In some cases, it kind of hurts the church. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, in the Christian faith especially, there's lots and lots of different sects. There's lots and lots of different interpretations. And a lot of different emphasis. Mm-hmm. So but we ultimately came together in the sense that we both love God and we both love the relationship aspect and we both love seeking God out. Yeah. We have different approaches because I think fundamentally men and women seek it out differently. But that underlying stability, that underlying goal is still there.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to say is that even though we are different denomination, so I'm asking myself a question: does this person have personal relationship with God? Do I have personal relationship with God? And how? Because even if we marriage, I still have to maintain my relationship with God, no matter what. And so, what is it that we bring to the table in terms of relationship with God? And we agree on that. Okay, let's seek God out, just like Drake mentioned. And so, everything that we have something different in our denominations, we will bring it back to the Word of God, and we really like dive into. Okay, what does the Word of God say about it? So having a different denomination is not a bad thing, but I would talk more into that. How did I navigate in terms of faith? Because the next episode we're talking about seeking out the counselor.
Yeah, seeking out mentorships in terms of an outside perspective.
Have mentorships in faith, that those that work before or walk before you will help you to navigate it as well, you know. So, but we will save that for the next episode. But what I try to say about faith here is not a deal breaker if it's a different denomination. As long as you know who that person is and you know their relationship with God, it can be like coming to the common ground.
Yeah, definitely. And then, well, we talked a bunch of different topics. The one was God. The second one was finances. So here you want to get into each other's finances. This is something that you probably want to do later on. It's like kind of like awkward if you're like, hey, how you doing? Let's talk about finances, you know, but.
Oh, I have a good transition. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So let's talk about God, right? Blah, blah, blah. And then say, oh, by the way, do you tithe?
Tithe. So tithe was something that kind of weirded me out at first because my family, interestingly enough, got excommunicated from the Greek Orthodox Church for this reason. Now, maybe I'm going a little too personal, but whatever. We'll just keep going. So I remember being really upset about this when I was younger because I'm going to go off on the church now.
They take my money. I'm going to move on.
No, it was. So what happened was my mom got divorced. And so she was with my dad, obviously. And my dad and my mom separated and then divorced. And mind you, at this point, I'm 6 and I'm the eldest of 3. So I'm like 6, 5, and 4. And my mother was a very young woman. She was probably only like 25, 26 at that time. You know, I'm way older than that. And so I can look back and understand how much stress she was under at that time. And mind you, this wasn't that long ago, but still back then, divorce was not acceptable in the church. Mm-hmm. So she was basically on thin ice. You know, they were upset with her because of that. And I remember during that time, I served in the altar. So I basically helped the priest. Now, in the Greek Orthodox Church, there's a very loving relationship between the altar, the boys who serve in the altar, and then the priests. And you're much more comfortable with them because, unlike in the Catholic Church, the Greek Orthodox Church priests are required to be married. And they have their own children, and they're very approachable. You know, they're very nice fatherly figures. And so I had a great relationship with our priest there. And eventually we got kicked out of that one because of the divorce. And then we had to move on to another one. And then she got excommunicated from that one because of, I think, of not tithing. So she was like, oh, I owe the church like $220 or whatever. You know, mind you, this is like the early 90s, so it's a lot of money. I was like, what? Like, you owe the church money? I was trying to wrap my head around it. So I always kind of had this like bitter feeling about that because I loved going to church. I loved it. But, you know, we got kicked out. So ouch. When Rubie brought it up again, I was like, oh.
No,
and I told her, and I'm pretty sure I shared the story with her. And then, yeah, so, but that was a new thing for me to get over because I didn't have a good relationship with this idea of tithing because of that bitter feeling. Mm-hmm. But as I grew in the church that we go to now, I see it as not just an expression of love for God, but I also see it as an expression of building the church and giving the church revenue so that the church can go on and do great things. Because just like anywhere else, if we pool our resources together, we become more powerful. Mm-hmm. And that ultimately, I think, is the purpose behind tithing. It's not, you know, there was a comedian that said, it has a very cynical approach, although he's a very great comedian. But he had a joke that said, like, God is so omnipotent and omniscient, but he can't seem to figure out money. And that's why the church is always asking for money. But that's not what it's about. It's a very cynical and one-dimensional thinking in terms of tithing. Tithing is not because God needs money. Mm-mm. God does not need money.
Nope.
It's not that at all. It's like you have children. Like we're about to have a child, and you want what's best for your children. So you, having some foresight, force them to invest. And that's what tithing actually is.
So for me, I didn't grow up in, rich family. And for me, giving money away is not a smart thing to do. But as I became Christian, and then I learned about the beauty of tithing and how powerful it can be for the church, also for the person. And it's just about, revealing the heart posture toward God and faith toward God. And it's just the powerful weapon to break the poverty mindset over that person, over that generation. Now we learn how to give, and how much more to give and then to receive. So I think that's why I asked him, do you tithe? And to see where we are in our heart posture toward God and toward the money. Because the Bible says very clear that, we don't serve two masters. You serve either God or manna. Manna is like the God of money. So, you can see again the posture, the lifestyle of that person and the driven of that person in life, what driven their life. And you can ask them like, okay, since you switch into the tithe, and say, oh, so how do you handle money? Do you budget? Do you have any budget? Do you have saving? What does it look like? I know it's very sensitive questions, but hey, we are in the episode of asking big questions, because when we don't ask big questions, it's become blurry. And when it's become blurry, when you say yes to the I do, this blurry, you have to make clear it out. Otherwise, it's going to be blurry all the time, and it's going to be frustrated, in the long run.
Yeah, and we had this question on here, and looking back on how we did it, it's we're going to advocate one position on this, and it says we discussed: would you have only joint bank accounts, some joint, or some individual? And from our experiences, the best way to do this is everything joint. That's just, in my opinion, and I heard Dave Ramsey talking about this, like literally it was like the other day. He was talking about getting out of the mindset. So I have to definitely credit him for this, because this is, I think, a beautiful way of thinking about it. And he said, you have to get out of the mindset of mine and yours. And the marriage is only ours.
Correct.
So whatever money I earn is not mine, it's ours. Whatever money Rubie earns, it's not hers, it's ours. And that is really the only approach that I can see works. Because there's so many arguments that couples get into that can be avoided if you just remove that mindset of mine and yours.
It's true.
Because I heard a story about this guy who was like, he's apparently he was very good at gambling with like sports betting. He knew sports very well. He'd make some really smart bets, and he would make like $1,000 or $2,000 from the bet. And that was extra money, right? Money that's outside of their typical earnings as a family. And he would use the money carelessly or frivolously, and the wife was very upset about it. And I'm pretty sure she was talking to Dave Ramsey about it. I think maybe it was him.
It could be.
It could have been the same episode. I know I heard this story somewhere, and it really struck home, because it struck me that I actually think it might have been this episode, but he was talking about that money is each other's. So it's not the husband's money. It's not, even though he won it, it's not extra money. It's extra money for the family. So that's, I think, will save a lot of people a lot of heartache and a lot of growing pains. Is if you break the mentality of selfishness and embrace a mentality of operating as a family unit.
And also, I asked the questions like, do you have debt, and what is your plan to tackle the debts? Because one thing that I think as a couple, it's very nice and kind when the other person like, oh, let me pay the debt for you. That's only apply when you guys are married. If you're not married, don't commit yourself into anything, any loans that co-pay, because I don't think that's healthy for the relationship. And so yes, for the budget. And I mean, when you go deeper into the relationship and that person is, I want to go further, and approaching marriage to that person. So you can ask the next questions you can ask the person is like, how would you envision us determine our budget? What kind of budget are we looking at? And what do you think about having a gender-based financial expectations? Like, okay, the dad will bring in this, and the wife will stay at home, or the moms will work. Like, are you okay if I gain more money than you? Because sometimes some I would say Asians will have a problem with that. I don't know, but some things that you need to ask is better to ask than
that gender-based financial expectations. Again, if we go back to that mindset of our money, then that really goes a long way, especially when you have a single income where the husband's working and the wife isn't, or the wife is working and the husband isn't. The other person is there's still their money. It's not just because they're home not working doesn't mean that they don't have access to money.
Yeah.
So getting rid of that mindset and embracing that us mindset is really the way to go.
And it's not just like one day and then you understand that. It's going to be like a period of time when the couple work on it. Because I remember there's a time that I have to stay at home. And for me, not working and stay at home is frustration. I was frustrated, but Drake came home and said like, "Hey, you still have money. Go enjoy your life." Not like I'm spending recklessly, but it just like encouraged me like, "Hey, our money is not yours, it's not mine, it's our," and he trusts me to use it wisely. So
yeah, it was actually. Is it okay if we share the journey about credit, like developing your credit?
Briefly, because we need to jump on something else.
Yeah, another thing is like helping each other when you have, let's say one person is more financially savvy in terms of like developing credit.
But this is only applied for a marriage couple.
Only applies for marriage couples, of course. Yeah, so if you're like in our case, one of us had like pretty good credit and the other one had none.
Not that I'm bad or anything, because I'm just starting working here in America.
Yeah, it's actually a really good thing because she's like, hey, I just use cash. I just use like what I have,
and I have no debts.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful and wonderful thing. And I was like, hey, let's work with that.
You out.
And now she has excellent credit.
Woo woo! Praise the Lord.
Yeah, that's a thing that you can help each other, especially if you if you work together and you have that our mindset again. Next topic is definitely one that you're going to want to talk about. I'd say that the first three are relationship killers: God, finances, and then children.
Yes.
So you definitely want to. Again, this is not something you want to do on the first date.
No.
These three topics you're going to want to do on like maybe the third or fourth or fifth dates. Maybe six.
Oh, like you guys are serious, you know? Because we got serious very quick, you know? So that's why we dive in.
But with children, you don't want to be like, hey, what are your finances like? Do you want to have children? Do you believe in God?
That person's like, bye.
The person's like, hey, I thought we were going to have coffee.
No, you got to interview now.
But you definitely want to understand where you stand with children, because the idea of getting married, spending 3 years together, and I'm just kind of like thinking about it now because I unfortunately I do know people who have gone through this, people who didn't deserve this to have happen to them, and then finding out that your spouse does not want to have children when you do it's very hard. Yeah, it's not fun.
So, I do know couples that they don't have children and they super happy and healthy. So it's really up to the person. And again, navigating the one. So you want to know that if that person have the same goal like mine in terms of children. So you can ask the person, hey, what do you think about children? Do you plan to have children? How many children do you think you want to have? Because it can be a different numbers. And then here we go again.
Yeah. And then you also want to discuss particularly if you're in your 30s or in your late 20s, around there, a timeline. Once you start getting serious of like, hey, when would you want to start having children? When do you think would be a good time? How many? Does that fit into the timeline?
Yeah.
Because, obviously this is something you want to discuss with a doctor, but, the later on for a female is more and more difficult. So always keep these things in mind when you're discussing that as well. And then also, once you get through that, how do you want to raise the children? What sort of discipline approaches do you want to have? What sort of values and expectations do you have for the children? What would you do? What are some of the things that the children could do that would really make you not okay? How would you approach those things?
Or you can ask like, what is the highlight from your childhood you want to pass on to your child, or things that you would not do with your child. So you can see a little bit of the parenting signs of that person coming out, and again, is navigating and talking and getting to know the person. How do you guys come to agreement on that? And I think a lot of time for us, it's not about having the same thing, having the same idea and same thought, which is, even though that we have a lot of common things, but how we tackle disagreement, how we discuss to have a common ground when we have disagreement. And I think that is something that's a skill set where a couple can last longer,
Definitely. So this next one is probably the one that you're going to want to open with when you're getting to know the person, because the next couple of ones the next one's pretty good too, but this one you're definitely going to want to like open with this one. And this is like Rubie was talking about, is like, what are your goals? What are your dreams for the future? What are your dreams for us as a couple? That's a really important one, because for us, I'd say that our dreaming as a couple has actually really played out. We did a lot of I remember when I went back on the list of things for us to do. We created like a running list of like things for us to do as a couple. And I remember at one point I went through it and I was like, wow, we did that, we did that, we did that, we did that. And by like a year, we had done a lot of like 80% of our list of things to do. And that is a great way, not just of bonding, but of moving, just like in finance, moving from that mindset of me and you to us.
Yeah, I agree. And so you can ask the questions to both of you guys, not just the person. Like, what are your dreams for the future? What is the dreams for us as a couple? Have a list. Be creative. For me, when I wrote a list, it's just something that came up during conversation, during random talk. And I said, oh yeah, that would be fun to do it together, to travel to this place together. Oh my gosh, I love this place too. So just write it down and then have it come up. And, so you can have goals for your partners, goals in finance, goals in traveling, goals in physical growth, spiritual growth, things like that, different aspects of things together as a couple. I think it's very healthy, and you can see, again, growing, and we're encouraging that you can start building that as a couple, dating stage. But I think it will be more beneficial and also like exciting when it's a couple, like a marriage couple.
Yeah, and then last question on that is really actually a beautiful one. It's about what are your fantasies about our marriage, and this doesn't have to be sexual. This can be, I think, even more if you take the romantic approach or the romantic vision of what this question is getting to. I think everybody has their moments from when they were a child or a teenager of envisioning and like fantasizing about what their marriage would be like when they're an adult. And that's what this question is really driving at. Like, what sorts of things were you really looking forward to doing as a married couple in in like the abstract.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for men and women, that's going to be very different things. I think men, from what I've gathered from talking with other men, is you sort of have like these fantasies about like really taking care of your wife, and at least for me, like giving my wife massages and going on food runs for her when she's pregnant. And
I
like,
remember that.
things like that.
Yeah.
And like I'd be like, oh man, I remember just feeling like one day my wife's gonna be pregnant and she's gonna be like, oh, I really want like octopus or milk,
Which is not healthy for pregnancy.
or like whatever that she's craving, and the satisfaction of going out there and getting that and bringing it for her, was something that I really, really looked forward to, even at like a young age.
Yeah, that was very interesting when I read that your answer, and I'm like, okay, cool. But for me, I think there were two things that about my dad popped up that like I love to see my husband that investing into the family. Like he had plans for the family. Oh, this week we're gonna do this. Oh, we're gonna sign up you for this class. Something like a vision for the family. And I'm just there, And also, the next one is that seeing my dad cooking in the kitchen is so nice. something about a man cooking in the kitchen is just so romantic. I didn't say that to Drake, but
Yeah.
I shared with him after the marriage while he cooking in the in the kitchen.
All right, this next topic goes along with that, and that's questions that regards the household. So we're gonna just we've already covered quite a bit of topics, and some questions. So this one we'll just kind of go through more quickly, and that's like questions regarding how will we manage our home in a way that honors us both. Who's gonna take whose last name, and where would you want to settle down? That's a big one, and have a home. Do you want to purchase a home? Do you want to rent for the rest of your life? Do you want to get an RV, get a boat and live on the boat?
Tiny house.
What do you call those? Shipping container houses.
Where do you want to live?
Yeah.
Which city? Or
And then what kind of pets would you want to have in the house? And obviously we have Boba, the corgi, our little dog. She is the best.
Yeah,
I'm glad
she's
that
sweet.
we're both dog people because we have such a great time raising her together. Mm-hmm. And then this, so those are two questions that you could like really get into, like maybe early on, maybe more so like pets, asking questions about pets. And then as the relationship grows, you can ask more questions about where would you like to live, and then and as the relationship grows, how would we live together? What would that look like? And this last section is probably going to be the last section that you want to talk about once you have a very good idea, rather, that this person is a really good choice for you, and that you're going to work very well together in a relationship, is getting to the topic of intimacy and sex.
No, we don't talk about like having sex before marriage. We're talking about like as we approach, after we approach marriage, how does sex look like? And it should be discussed before it, because what I learned is that is to be honest, it's not comfortable for girl to mention that. But as I, walk through my journey and also walk through my like hearing different in text, and I think it's better to have a conversations and it's clear and expectations is there, because without that you can run into so many problems, just like children.
Yeah, and it sets a good expectation and good healthy sexual communication to discuss it first. Mm-hmm. So if you have a clear understanding and can have these conversations about sex before marriage, and have an understanding of like, hey, who is this person as a sexual person? What do they fantasize about? What are their sexual needs? What are their intimate dreams? And how often do they want to have sex? And like what makes them aroused and excited? You could talk about these things in a healthy way as you're getting closer and closer to marriage. And that way, once the marriage night comes, it's a very beautiful experience. And then from there, you can grow sexually because the sexual chemistry between you as a married couple is very important. It's but it's an after effect of the love and the trust and the main parts of the relationship, that is the love, the trust, the honor, the respect, and the coexisting together in a way that is beneficial and growing for both of each other as individuals. It will naturally lead to that. So that desire, that healthy sexual desire is, again, an after effect of all of these things culminating in a oneness relationship. And that's what the act of sex is. It's that the physical act of becoming one.
Yeah.
So having a good roadmap of how that's going to look like and discussing it will make sure that you both are on the same page, and will make sure that you both have your sexual needs and desires met.
And again, it's like I have to clarify. Sex is beautiful and is God created for human. Because it's not about lust. It's not about sexually desire for another person. It's a beautiful journey for two people committed together. And like you said, like it's a byproduct of love and commitment. And a little bit sharing my story. And so I didn't have. Drake was my first kiss.
Yeah.
So I told him straight up, like, hey, I have kept myself very clear because I want myself as a gift to my husband, And so for me, of course, I hear different things about sex, and I was nervous. I don't know much, but again, I'm not talking about pornography or lust. I'm talking about the one that God ordained us. Oh, not ordained, but like the one that God created for us is really beautiful. All I can say, like when we have intimacy time with each other, all I can think one word is beautiful, because you connect with the person in a different level that only marriage couple allowed to taste it. And that is different, And so, yeah, I just encourage you that discuss these hard questions with the person. And again, the person, give them time to think about it. I know like it's hard to ask this question, but think about it and then come back later. And one of the reasons that, I'm sorry, not one of the reasons, we did this through typing because he was on deployment. And so it's also, it was a good timing because it gives me like not face to face with him, but also have time to write things down and think through it. So if you're comfortable talking to each other, go ahead. If you say like, hey, let's text or write down, but I encourage is in person. The reason we couldn't do it in person because, he was away for work. But I think that would be it.
Yeah, there's a couple of other topics that we missed, but we can go over them just very briefly. And that will be discussing things that relate to family and friends. This is actually a really important one. And it's like how, especially like how you want to deal with parents. In our cultures, we talked about this before in the familial problems episode, is in our cultures, we don't believe in putting parents in homes, nursing homes. Also, having a clear understanding of each other's communication styles. Obviously, this is going to happen over time. It's just like, hey, this is my communication style is this. And then it's actually something different, But at least understanding what what sort of things stress your partner out? What times do they need to be alone? What are their pet peeves? And then how can you expect to stay connected throughout the day? Now, for everyone, this is going to look a little bit different because, people work, and some people are more or less available during work to communicate. And having boundaries about that is also very important. Mm-hmm. So we'll leave it with that. We discussed a lot of topics here that are going to really drive at deep understanding of each other. And if you wrote a bunch down and you like them, they work for you, or if you have others that you'd like to recommend, let us know in the comments. Also, we want to make sure that we're letting you guys know that we love it when you guys subscribe and recommend the show to new friends and family and people that you think might really benefit from having a discussion about relationships, marriage, and the topics that we like to discuss here on Engaging Walk. And as always, we love you guys. We thank you. Check us out on YouTube. We recently posted a new video. It's about our road trip to Yosemite and Sequoia National Parks. You can find that on our YouTube, which is Engaging Walk. And we love you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. So for this week's assignment, pick out 5 of the questions that we went over in this podcast, and make sure that you have a clear understanding of how you feel about those questions, and then ask your partner ones that you'd like to talk with them about. Maybe these are questions that you haven't gotten into, or questions that you would like to ask a future a partner when you are going into that dating stage if you're single.
And if you are married, you can still ask your spouse and ask and check if the answer had been updated, because sometimes life change and their perspective change. So keep them updated, keep yourself updated too with the answer. So for the next episode, we will talking about searching for counselor.
Yeah, so just like in normal aspects of life, everyone needs a mentor to get them through difficult and really challenging aspects of our lives, and marriage can be challenging. Mm-hmm. So navigating who the right person can be when you're in that dating stage can be very challenging, and then having that outside perspective is going to be really important.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover that in next week's episode, and thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Drake.
And my name is Rubie.
And we are
signing out. Thank you. Bye.